as a model that says this fairly represents the time that we need to take to do things. And that includes overheads, obviously. And yes, there might be some cases where there's absolutely nobody there, and that can all happen without affecting any other workload. But often, given the numbers that we have and the numbers that we've inherited, well, that's probably not a good word, the numbers that we now have, given that the competition is closed down, our staff are busy. And yes, there'll be a point if we get a lot more cremations or burials that we might have to look at increasing staff. But this is our best guess, and it's not just a thumbs up guess. It's a best calculated guess, understanding the business, understanding the workload, for us to fairly set fees to recover the money we need to. But it's a bit like rates. It is a bit of a tax. There's not a perfect science in everything we do when we're very reactive to the customers. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. If you think it's unfair, obviously you'll make that call. But from an officer's perspective, I guess that's our best advice at the moment.
Thank you for that. So, yeah, just around have we got kind of any idea around what impact this 10% charge on the funeral directors will actually do around, are we going to lose business over to Matamata or Hamilton or?
As far as I guess, sorry, the second part of your question about whether we would lose people to other areas, I would suggest not, because people want to be buried in Tauranga, and it wouldn't make sense for them to be somewhere else to be cremated, etc. It's been an ongoing discount that we've been giving, and we are losing a reasonable amount of revenue annually for something that the funeral directors would be able to just pick up by paying as they have been.
You're the expert on this, Councillor Roseman. Do you agree with that comment?
No.
Or?
No, I think my past comments on this area have been well stated. Whether or not council should be competing against other private businesses as a personal view, I don't think we should be, but we're in the space. We've got the facility there, and in order to recoup costs, because it comes down to a simple question, either the customer pays the bill for the use of the services at the crematorium, or it gets charged through rates.
So just about going elsewhere, is it? Because you've done a bit of investigation on that, didn't you? Or?
No, just around the level of increased service that may be coming to Tauranga in the near future.
Oh, yeah.
Other service providers are entering the market in Tauranga very shortly, and Legacy does have a replacement cremator on its way, so it will be firing itself again. Not too sure when, but it will happen, and other providers will be coming. Yeah, once the market gets to a size that they deem it's appropriate for them to enter.
Okay, no, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Just a point of clarification, I think they're competing with us because I believe we were first to have a cremator. Would that be correct? No? Yes. Yeah. Yes, so just clarifying what Martin said, I believe the new people will be competing against us, and to moan about a discount going west, I think they're going to be our competitors very shortly. They don't seem to care that whether we're going to be sustainable in the long run, so I'd suggest that 10% disappearing is not a bad idea, especially if it's reducing our loss.
Well, it was all of them, yeah.
So that 10% is a cost as a whole, not just for cremations as well. So that's for standard burial and use of the cemetery. Yep.
All right. Is there any other questions on the crematorium?
I'd just like to clarify that. In relation to conversations with other providers in this area, we are providing a service and the charges that we charge cover the entire service, including upkeep of the grounds, whereas they don't have to provide that service, and that's where the difference comes in. So we either attempt to recoup some of the cost of the maintenance of the entire Pies Bar cemetery, or we don't. And if we and others around town, obviously. So if we take that out of the equation and just charge for the services provided in relation to the cremation, then we'd be far more competitive. But we aren't going to do that because we're trying to pay for the whole service that we provide.
And so what's the difference for burial if you're out of, what's the quantum of that? If you're out of Tauranga?
Oh gosh, sorry, I'd have to look it up.
I don't think I saw, when I was looking at it, I don't think it mentioned it in the report.
What team? Non-residents, that's $1,000 for the ongoing additional maintenance of plots.
Okay, so it's just for burials, is it? Yeah, and you just pay, $1,000 more than a Tauranga resident. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, and particularly if people are living close to the boundary or have been long-term residents of Tauranga, for example, and have moved out for other reasons. And yeah.
No, I agree with that. Our ratepayers are picking up the maintenance of the cemetery, and you know, obviously if they have been a Tauranga ratepayer for a number of years and have gone off elsewhere and come back, that's fair enough to waive that. But you know, if you're a ratepayer, you're subsidising it, so I think you should get a better deal. Councillor Schuler.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, Barbara and Co, on the talking about the figures and your best guess estimates. So obviously you'll be able to say we agree we implement it. You'll be able to obviously keep track of the ins and outs this year. And I mean, if your best guesstimates are out, we're happy to make those adjustments as we go to, you know, make it again, because we are dealing with an area obviously in people's lives, and I think we all heard, you know, these times of life which are pretty obviously tough for people at the time, and the extra financial burden is another level of stress. But if we are genuine in the fact we are delivering at cost, you know, the best services we can for those families, we're happy obviously if we go through, have the understanding of the numbers. If it meant we were low, we'd go up again. If it meant we were high, we're happy to come back.
Absolutely. We are going through a comprehensive review of fees and charges before the next annual plan, and so we can make sure that there's some really hard data to support the recommended, well, probably a lot of recommended fees, but this one in particular.
Yeah, good. And one more question, if it's okay, Your Highness, if that's what I can give you. Just on the backfilling, that's a change we're seeing in family choices going, you know, it's becoming more popular. What are the exact extra costs that we incur or that necessitate that fee?
Sorry, what was that? What fee was you referring to? We just lost you.
The backfilling. The backfilling.
Oh, the backfilling.
Yeah. What exactly goes into that creates that cost? Assuming that the family's filling it in.
Well, yes, but usually they hire our digger, and usually they don't usually fill it in completely, and then we have to go back and make sure that it's compacted. So the process of covering in your family members or your loved ones' coffin is usually, you know, we need to go back and we need to make sure it's compacted, but often they hire our equipment as well.
We had a submitter talking about that, saying, you know, there's usually staff around when they bury. Could they not just come and do the compacting at that time? Is that a realistic?
Yeah, yes, we don't like to leave a grave not compacted and as completed as can be, so staff will be there waiting to finish that off.
But I think the point was they're there already, you know, and
Why should we pay for them?
yeah, well, I think because if obviously if someone else, like whether it's our staff or the family filling it in, it's just saying is it a longer time frame when the family are filling it in, is it, or?
I'll just check on the fees. If they're filling it in, do we charge them the full burial fee? No.
If there's no backfilling from the family, there's a charge that's part of what we charge the funeral directors that goes into the overall cost. But if we know the family's backfilling, then there's a reduced charge, and then this is the additional for the backfilling. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right. Doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
Can we find out, like, can you point out which fee it is that would normally be charged so we get an understanding of what it is? I guess if I can ask a follow-up on that, like, I mean, the self-backfill option seems a really clear case to me, like having worked at that facility and done the work to deal with backfill. And admittedly it was a while ago, and certainly the hourly rates were a lot lower than I'm sure they are now. But I look at that number and I just go, how on earth could we get there? You know, like the Mayor has made comments around how much a concrete path is and all this sort of stuff. That's one thing, but that requires traffic management often, it requires physical materials, it requires labour, design, a whole lot of complex things. This requires something that I've done personally, and I'm wondering, have we overcomplicated things? Because to actually charge members of our community $293, hopefully that's with GST, I think, you know, I just go, how on earth have we got to that point? It just seems beyond belief when it does not take that much time, unless they're paid humongous rates, but I'm sure we're not. We don't pay our staff that well. So I really have to question. I'm not trying to be mean-spirited about it, but it's way off the chart for me. And I would say the Mayor, you know, his comments about concrete, I'm open-minded, I don't know, but this one I'm pretty confident of. It just seems far too excessive.
I guess it comes back to what Barbara was saying before, that ultimately it's council's decision, and if there's not a comfort level around the prices that are put in here, and plus if we're doing a full review through fees and charges, that it can be something that we can put another look into.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully that's covered cemeteries, is it? I am.
Sorry, it's not really clear in the fees and charges. Okay. Yep, but we can make that, yeah.
Right.
Well, just a quick look, it doesn't look like it's clear.
Got any more on cemeteries? Or okay, LTOs. Sure, we'll. Obviously, the recommendations are mainly dealing with LTOs. So.
You can paper, scissors, rock me. No. You go.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. So just in terms of the paper, thank you, and we have looked at this a number of times, and we definitely had a number of submissions on this, and I'm just very aware that I do quite often bike down the Strand, our dining street, on my way home late from council, and it's pretty empty, and we do want a vibrant city. So, but one of the submitters came and talked about the 11 or 13 page or 22 page contract they got for a licence to occupy, and we compared that with a 2-pager that had apparently been on another council's website. Have we dealt with that?
Yes, that is being dealt with.
Wonderful. that does make me concerned that we are making this very complicated, and I don't think it should be. I understand the reasons that we do need, I think we do need to have a licence, but I'd like it to be as easy as possible. There was also I think Mount Main Street talked about the fact that they could probably operate their the businesses within the Mount Main Street area, which are actually the Mount Main Street. I then talked to Tauranga Main Street, and it's quite a different area. Like Tauranga Main Street collects or looks after a different group of businesses than what we'd call Tauranga Central, so they didn't want to be part of that. But in terms of the option, and I'm liking 80% off or not charging the fees at all, but if we were charging 20%, knowing that would mean we would have to have somebody administering and collecting that charge, does that actually mean it's a cost to the council rather than making any money?
Correct. So did some real rough math on 50 versus 80%, being that you're likely to have more people sign up at 80% than 50%. So not an exact science at this point. It's a loss in revenue of about 80,000. And yes, there is some cost, even with free, that you'd save on invoicing, but it wouldn't be substantial.
So I think Mount Main Street understood there was a half a person that would be involved in licence to occupy?
Yes, so we'd allowed for half a FTE on licence occupiers in the current zones.
And that's quite a lot more than a few thousand.
They do regularly get quite a lot of here and there questions around the element, and then providing updates. So there is, yes, sometimes that could be conservative, but other times, in particular coming more towards this time of year, it does increase in workload for them.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is where we talk about whether there's been significant investment in that area in the last 25 years. That seems going a long way back. How do you think you're going to cope with significant?
I was planning to leave that to yourselves for discretion in all fairness. So
Mate.
I wanted to provide you an option there to say, look, maybe Zone A has received, in your mind, significant investment in their streets, but the other zones haven't. So I wanted to give you that option to decide. Also, 25 years isn't actually a terribly long time when it comes to hard streetscape infrastructure. So that's where 25 years came to, because predominantly even the shortest lasting streetscapes should be lasting 25 years as an asset.
And so if you think that somebody would say, yep, great, 24 years ago they upgraded the footpaths on here and therefore we should be paying licence to occupy.
I may have opened you up to a submission in a future annual plan, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All yours.
Kia ora. Yeah, firstly, and it's more of a point, that point B on the recommendations I think is really awesome, and a great inclusion to the overall recommendations. A good step towards transparency there. Questions similar strand to Jen. So if we went for D4, would that have a material impact on rates, residential rates? No. Okay. No. That's great. And a follow-up question. So we had Downtown the Mounts come and a part of their present as a submitter, and a part of their proposition was a partnership on the administration of any potential, what was the word they used? Sorry, it's on point 15. Any potential, there's a word there, income generated from LTOs. Have we explored that suggestion further, noting that part 15 on page 225A1 suggests that type of activity but excludes the partnership approach?
So I'll try to cover that off in two parts. So we have looked at Mount Main Street's proposal of they administer the licences. We've had an initial look from a legal and risk perspective, being that then somebody else would be issuing licences on our behalf for our asset and what liability would run with that. From an initial review, that doesn't really pass muster as an option, unfortunately, and would likely be spending the same amount of time as staff to administer that agreement in its own right. On how we allocate potential revenue funds is not yet fleshed out in the sort of detail that I think you're asking at this point in time. But that point B of ensuring that we are reporting transparently on revenue will give you an understanding and ability to decide what to do with it.
Just a follow-up on that. Obviously, you've looked at administrating, and I understand that. But is how much of that, the extra FTEs is administrating? How much of that is enforcement?
I think I'd have to get back to you on that one. It's
okay.
As I understand, it's about 75% of that is administrating versus enforcement.
Okay, and I guess the question related to that is, for example, could the main streets be the enforcers of the, potentially, but
potentially under the upcoming bylaw update, probably not though.
Okay,
something to look at.
All right. No, that's great. I guess just some of my comments. I think, while I appreciate the half-year fee, I think I'd probably put that to 75%. To make it possible. I struggle with this, and I understand. Businesses it is a tough time for them at the moment, but this is also we're kind of doing this by 1,000 cuts. It's gone through 5 different iterations, and these businesses, it's sort of like sometime we've got to rip the plaster off and just follow through, because if we're going to start setting precedents that actually we're never going to charge them, and we sort of need to make a decision as council. Are we going through with this? And if we are, let's just do it. If we're not, let's take them away altogether. But this flip-flopping and uncertainty, I don't think helps any of us. So I think it is important that we either make a decision to continue, and if we are, I just we're trying to complicate something that doesn't need to be complicated. We've already seen and sent a very clear direction. This has to be easy. It's got to be a 2-pager that they can sign up for, because we're trying to make it easy on them. And again, with a 50% discount this year, if I get that businesses are struggling, but if it's not economic for you to pay $50 a year for a square metre of space, then potentially you probably shouldn't be using the footpath. It's it's quite clear, I guess, in my mind around that. Councillor Schuler?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just highlighting, guys, thanks to the report 13A, half of the submissions opposed the changes indicated support in principle for a fee. So it's coming down to the detail, I suppose, and also just hearing the Deputy Mayor's comments about if we have big discounts, whether it's worthwhile. If we take a long-term approach and we went back to the numbers, whatever they end up being, if it's the right thing we choose as a council to do this, then if it means that the first year or the second year or the third year are a bit less, I don't think we should be as worried about that. But I agree with you, Mayor, on I'm not sure from a simplicity point of view, the concept of having that seasonal thing, simplicity would suggest to me that a business running wants to have it, and if it's okay to be outside, the annual fee should factor in the overall use over the whole year and come up with a simple number. So I agree with you on that one. And again, I was just going to ask the staff question of there's a bit of feedback there around splitting the city into two rates, where at the previous meeting we decided to try and go with a blunt, simple approach. Could you just give us a bit more of a discussion around that?
So that is looking at zones A and C. I believe fairly objectively are much more hospitality focused zones. So maybe if you wanted, that can be treated like a charge zone, with the fringe zones charged slightly differently, being that is where there is less foot traffic through. Just trying to give you some option of structure.
So just through you, Mr. Chair, if you chose D1, you'd have to just determine what those two different rates would be, and that's not clear necessarily at the moment.
Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, my recollection of our discussions on this and the previous decision we'd made was that the city centre and Mount Maunganui were going to get implemented, and we were going to do some work on the city fringes, I believed. I thought that was where we got to, is that?
So, sorry, that were the current zones that could be charged were to be charged, and then this upcoming work is around other areas past those fringes.
Okay, so the city fringes get brought into this.
Yes.
Because they already could be charged.
So the fringes in zones B and D, as an example, run from approximately Arundel, I believe, through to 11th and down to Gulf Road.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Schuler, have you got anything more to add, or?
I will ask one more question again for that clarity. So the 20% discount to zones where significant investment has not been experienced in the last 25 years. So just could you please clearly reiterate the purpose of the fee? And I mean, does it directly relate to whether there has been a new footpath put in the last few years? I mean, obviously when we build city assets, we want them to last a long time. If we were changing them every 5 years, rates would be going up 50% a year. So, there's a natural tension there, but could you just clearly explain the purpose of the LTOs? They're clearly not just about cityscape improvement.
So historically, back before the previous bylaw and policy revisions, it had been purely in place for the Strand and for Wharf Street when that upgrade happened. So very historically, it had been for upgrades. Now the previous revision allowed for it to be brought a little bit more as a use of public space rather than for upgrades. So that was a change. This really just talks to the Mount Main Street and other submissions around the feeling that they felt that there was an unfairness around being charged a price that had historically been used for a different purpose. So.
Okay, no, I understand that. That's reasonable. Thank you.
Councillor Schooler.
Thank you. Just two other questions on C. I know I think the amount talked about actually being busy for half a year and not busy for half a year, and I assume that's why this suggestion has come in. Number one, I'm not sure why you choose 65% if we're talking half a year, but so I'd like an answer on that one. And also, have you talked to the hospitality venues about where they would put the furniture in the second half if they had it there for half a year, whether they'd have room to put that furniture elsewhere? Or would you be okay that it was out there but just not used?
So On the 65%, that's taking it, yeah, I appreciate naturally you'd say, well, that's 50% of the fee. However, the summer period is the busier period. It's also accounting for the fact that there is additional administration involved in that. So if we looked at how Auckland Council structured their fees, they charge a blanket administration fee as a bulk, and then you pay your square metre on top of that administration fee. We don't complicate things quite like that. We just, well, their administration fee is yearly, so it is slightly different. So that 15% accounts for that additional administration. And where they put their tables, no, we wouldn't be okay with them still being there and not used, because, well, that's still use, and how are we ever going to police if they're being used or not? So that would be up to the business of where they put their tables, if they store them somewhere or pull them inside.
So do we have a quantum of what other cities charge for these sort of charges?
We do. It was in a previous report. I don't have that open at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry.
It was for the record, really, just to show what other cities charge. But
Sorry, still any questions?
yeah, if there's still more questions, is there any more questions? Okay, if there's no more questions, obviously we have, maybe we just have the recommendations up. We've got a lot probably to unpack, so we probably just need to have a bit of a discussion around where we're heading for this. So I think from what I hear, obviously A is a given. B, is anyone want to argue with that one? I think it's a good idea. Yeah. What's that?
I'd like it, if any.
Yeah. Then, I guess the next one, are we wanting to, we've heard Councillor Schuller's comments. Do we want to complicate it, or I think I probably am sold on Councillor Schuller's idea that actually we make that, we actually look at it as a year and take into account that there is less use during the winter, so we take that into account when we set the fee. Then D, has anyone want to get into any of those?
Sorry, just for a point of clarification, the status quo, is that taken care of in E, is it? Because it doesn't list anywhere there that the current version is an option to choose from.
So yes, you could just not address anything in D at all and just move straight to E, and then you would end up adopting the $50 per square metre.
Yeah, just take out that B. You just, with B, I think you just say with resolutions B, which is new.
So would I be out of order moving this motion with deletion of D?
No, you can do that.
Well, I so do.
Okay. I'm happy to second that. So we just, E, so we take out,
No, sorry, C and D.
take out C and D, and then in E we just take out, just leave B. So take out D to D. Okay, Councillor Taylor, would you like to speak to this?
I've probably spoken to this before in the previous meetings we've had on it. I understand the submissions and the concerns of the current economy, but it probably same would apply to the ratepayers that are talking to us about our 12% or our 10% rates increase. Everybody's feeling the pinch. I think this is a good step forward in equity in the city, making sure that the Mount and the CBD are treated similarly. And I like the idea that we've got a reasonably simple proposition from the way it's calculated and works. So, yeah, happy to move this.
Yeah, I think I reiterate those points. Look, this is not, just another fee. It's a charge for using council property. I think that's something that is very important. These businesses pay a lease cost to lease their buildings, and they earn more revenue by having more tables and chairs on the footpath. It is a choice. They can choose not to use the footpath, in which case they won't pay anything for that. So, I do get that they are struggling. I do also agree. Everyone is struggling, and we're trying to. But this has been an ongoing process, and I think the uncertainty is almost worse than the actual result. I think if we can draw a line and say this is where we're going, I think it will actually make life a lot easier. People can make decisions around around what works for them, and I think I agree that equity piece, it's paying for something that hopefully is helping these businesses, which is the footpath. And obviously we also want these businesses to be successful and using those spaces, because it does bring that vibrancy to our city. So I also support this. Councillor Baker.
Just to complement what you've said while we're in this hybrid debate discussion phase, I think to really enhance the partnerships with our downtown, with our main streets, and those that even aren't involved with the current way that this is formatted, that it would be good to have them engaged when it comes to implementing any potential income that's generated from the LTOs. So whether that needs to be an additional amendment to ensure that engagement happens, or council just takes that point, I think that's something that we should add, because it is what we heard through the submissions as well. So I think it would be a nice complementary action. Does there need to be an amendment?
Yeah, I guess. I guess that was the directive I gave to council around the new agreement. We heard it very loud and clear that the agreement was clunky, but two, it should have been taken out to the main streets. So I have given that direction, and I hope that staff will follow through with that. That they will take the new proposed agreement out and discuss it. So it is this is a partnership approach, and as I say, we want these businesses to be successful and do business easily, and we want to be a good partner in that. So that's across the board. So
Happy.
Yeah. So we'll note that as an action. But good point. Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Sorry, can I just? I'll be prepared to change the motion, and we could add something into B, I think. Councillor,
So on B, after and, engages with those paying the fees on.
Do you want to be more specific and go to the main street?
That's it from, yep. We could say with the main streets, but it's actually, we would probably do that, we would sensibly do that through Main Street, but it actually is, as Tauranga Main Street have said, there's people paying the fees that aren't part of Tauranga Main Street, and at the Mount it's definitely connected. But it should be, it's the ones paying the fees that I think we should engage with.
Yeah, I'm comfortable, so we're happy to make that change. Councillor Crowther.
I think I go along with what the Mayor and Councillor Taylor have said in terms of the broad gist of this. I think we have a lot of complexity in all the options. I appreciate the staff for bringing the options, because that's what we needed. But when I look at the options, I kind of go, wow, we've got potentially sort of like 4 different levers to pull, if not more, in terms of 80% discounts and 20%, all that sort of stuff. And when I look at it, I kind of go, fundamentally, it's probably not what we're trying to do is probably not like rates, where if you charge rates according to the market values or the use, and then added a layer of where you're located, and then the council infrastructure, you'd probably go that Automoto would give a bit of a discount and Te Papa would probably pay a premium, and that's not how it works. It's solely based on one, it's a tax, basically. Here, I think we're trying to blend in a couple of things, and it does make it complex, but fundamentally, I think, as I think the Mayor has previously said, it's that someone's using some public space to get some gain in their business, hopefully, or else they wouldn't continue doing it, and the fees are not too exorbitant for most businesses in the scheme of things. But I do have an issue that I can't quite understand why we're going from our previous discussions where I thought we were going to have the two zones, which was in one of the options we were presented, the two zones, Central City and Central Mount, Mount Main Street, sorry, got the wrong jargon there. They were going to be in one pricing zone, and I thought there was going to be a different pricing zone for the Mount Central and the South City. And so when I look at what we're actually deciding to do, we're saying, no, we're getting rid of that. We're going to have a $100 rate, so that's the compromise rate, and we're going to do the half price discount for this year. And I kind of go, well, I've lost the missing piece there, so I don't think I can support it as it stands, because I am strongly of the view that there should be, based on the fact it's not a tax, it's based on what they're likely to extract a bit from the use of that public space, that you would expect the people in downtown Mount and downtown Tauranga to get a bit more bang for buck than the ones in the fringes. And I thought that's why we had the two rates. We didn't want to complicate it. We just wanted to keep it as simple as possible, but say there are two different rates. And then the third area was, as Sean said, the rest of the city, and we'll come to that later if we do ever come to it. And I'm struggling how we've got now to just go, right, there's one rate for all four zones.
That's what we agreed at the meeting.
I thought the argument
was a flat fee across the city.
I thought we said there were two.
No.
Okay. Well, then I'm back in the. I don't support that then, because I think that goes against the whole principle of it for me.
It was $100 a square metre across the city with a 50% discount this year.
Okay.
That was what.
So I would on that grounds. I don't. I love the principle. I love the idea of actually doing that. I think we've just got it. We've got it wrong in terms of the setup. So I wouldn't be able to support that. Yeah.
Just from a drafting perspective on the revised B, is that what was intended? The conversation started off about consulting on the agreements, and this now looks like consulting on where the money will be spent. So I'm just making sure that we're understanding that's where we're at. Where do we spend it? Cool. Thank you.
Because of that reason. And are we talking about all of it now, or can we come back and talk about the other issues and the user fees later? Are we just covering this?
Oh, well, this if...
Resolution. Well, okay, right. So I also don't support aspects of the cemeteries pricing. So I wouldn't be happy to support this as it stands, and would like to have a better understanding of the basis for some of those charges before I signed it off. And in particular, the self-burial fee and the... Sorry, I've just got to go back to the other page now. Sorry, not self-burial. What am I saying? Self-backfill. Self-backfill fee, the... Gosh. Yeah, probably not so much the same day, given what the conversation is. That's more of a marketing issue, I think. But, gosh, I can't even find... Let me find the other report. Then I'll wind my way through to it. Gosh,
Is there anyone else that would like? Yeah, Councillor Currat.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me. On the dining charge, I think given it's a premium product being on the street, sure, you're adding capacity or tables, but you know, in most situations, those tables on the street are actually of more value to a lot of businesses because a lot of people prefer to be outside, well, particularly in the summer. So in that sense, I think the fee is very reasonable and it's very justifiable. When you look at the advantage or the commercial advantage that those businesses have, which are taking advantage of the public street interface. So I have no problem with it. I think when you look at the differentiation between the CBDs and the more outlying areas, but you know, from my observation, a lot of those businesses in those outer lying areas actually do very well because to some people, actually going to the CBD, whichever Mount or Tauranga, has its challenges. You've got parking charges, etc., access. On that basis, I sort of support not having too much of a differentiation between those and a different fee. So, yeah, I support that. On the cemetery issue, it's like, I agree with Councillor Crowther. I think we needed a proper, more sort of casual session on it to better understand some of the details around the justification for, you know, those charges. But that potentially could be left to next year when we have the comprehensive review and the undertakers or those people providing the service could come to us again and probably, you know, we can entertain some better discussion around that. Yep, that's where I am. Thank you.
Agree. Yeah, agree with that. That's a good point I think you make. We are looking at the user fees and charges, so it's a good time to dive deeply into those. Councillor Schuler.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, having said I'm all for simplicity earlier, I just would ask the mover and the seconder if one way would be to look at option 2 from D that we've discounted and add that back in general to say that, just to acknowledge the prehistory, I suppose, of where these things did originally come from, and that when we do put certain amount of money and investment into an area, then obviously that's at the full price, and that could also, to a degree, you know, handle some of your further out areas at the moment that haven't had maybe haven't had as much done recently. I suppose the part of this question too, in the bigger picture of this, we're going through a city centre revitalisation, and you know, for me, thinking about the Mount and Tauranga City all as one thing in the ultimate scheme of things, at some stage, I hope soon after, or this main city centre revitalisation, we will be looking hard at what we can do to make Mount Maunganui Main Street even better again. So, yeah, I just wonder, mover seconder, whether you'd be happy to move and add into the general one level rate across the city that 20% discount across areas. Now, I know there's a grey area there with the wording significant investment, which adds another layer of complexity for us, but for everyone's consideration before I say anything else.
I'd say no, because I don't know that it's that big a difference in area. We're not talking about the whole of the city. We're only talking about 11th Avenue through to Sulphur Point. And I don't know what the definition of the Mount is, but it's a similarly small area. So I wouldn't want to change it.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. You know, part of this, and I think what we discussed earlier is actually the businesses, depending on the attractiveness and where they're positioned, they'll pay that difference in their rates. They'll pay that difference in their lease costs. It's going to cost you a lot more to lease a property in the CBD, for example, than it is in Cherrywood. So, you know, those businesses are already I guess, you know, their location is already being taken into account. I just don't think that we need to complicate this. It's about simplicity in my mind.
Okay, thank you. Happy to support. And on the cemetery, based on the previous discussion with Barbara, that this is effectively a live thing going forward that will be monitored and reviewed, and we've got some, obviously, the user fees and charges coming up. I'm happy to support.
Councillor Rolliston.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I support, again, coming to this, it's obviously been through a few iterations, but simplicity, fairness and equity that sits behind this. But I think we can go down rabbit holes around seasons, affordability, different areas getting more benefit at certain times. So I think I'm supportive of the resolution. I'm supportive of it being, I know there's been some good points, but there's a lot of people struggling out there, and it sort of aligns too with the challenges that we've been making in the last 3 days around rating and what that actually looks like. So it is tough, but we've got to make these decisions, and I think simplicity and fairness is probably where I'm leaning towards.
Right, Councillor Schooler.
Thank you, and I will reiterate that I'm promoting vibrancy in our city, and I would like, as I did previously, to be able to say to vote against the licence to occupy fee, although I like the concept is fine, and I wonder if the mover and seconder would consider a new C to say adopts the previously agreed street dining, what are we calling it, licence to occupy, full stop, and take that separately, and then on E would be adopt the schedule with amendments from resolutions B and C. Oh, sorry.
So what's...
So, new motions. Adopt the previously agreed licence to occupy that was consulted on.
That's what we're doing, isn't it?
Yes, but then take that separately.
She must be able to vote against that.
I voted. I support everything else, but I'd like to be able to vote against that one.
Oh, okay.
That wording isn't terribly good, Jeremy. If you wanted to approve it.
Could I get clarity on that again, please, Deputy Mayor? I just missed some of that.
So we do, there's been a bit of confusion just between us about what the level that we are voting, the licence to occupy that we're voting on, and it's what we have previously agreed and what we went out to consult on. So that's something that we have around the table approved. So I would like that in the motion as a C, and I'd like to vote on that separately, and then be able to adopt E, adopt the other schedule of fees with the amendments of B and C. Thank you, Jeremy.
So we just change the reference there to what was consulted on rather than previously agreed, because there's
Correct.
been a
Great.
bunch of different agreements.
I
over the
thought I
last
needed
period of
some
time.
help on that one. Thank you.
Have we got a second? Well, let's Rod. Okay. Yeah, we can bring that in then. And then you want to vote on that one separately? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Crowther, have you got...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Just from editing, so you then need on E, you just need to put from resolutions B and C, please.
Though clearly by the time we get there, if C doesn't pass, then we'll take C back out again.
All right. Councillor Crowther, are you happy?
I'd just like more information, ideally, before on those cemetery charges before I voted, but
Okay.
it sounds like everyone's happy to move on.
Yeah. Well, all right.
Yeah, I just got to admit, I'm struggling to So just, yes, sorry guys, I'm really struggling. I'm not quite sure. Again, I asked for clarity from the Deputy Mayor and she spoke clearly, but I'm still not quite sure what I'm being asked to vote on at the moment.
Sorry, Kev, I think you're fine. So I have just requested an additional line so that the resolution does record the fact that we had previously agreed on the licence to occupy, and our agreement went out in the draft annual plan consultation. And I have just asked that we vote on that one separately from the rest of the resolution.
And so C reads, adopt the licence to occupy as consulted in on the draft user fees and charges.
Just add the word fees in there. Licence to occupy fees.
Just fees. Okay.
Adopt the licence to occupy fees.
Take off.
No, just add adopt the licence to occupy fees.
Fees. Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Fees.
Yeah.
You leave it like that. Yeah.
As consulted on, yeah. Cool, so can we just...
It's an active decision to make that particular decision, which is cool.
Is that right, or...
Oh, what's you done now? What did you just delete things? No, all I wanted to do was add the word fees in to what you had before, so...
Yeah,
That's
cool.
fine, stop.
Yeah.
Don't touch.
Cool. Okay, so if we just put that up into C, because that's been agreed to add that. All right, so now you don't want to finish up, Councillor Taylor?
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take C first, because we've just dealt with that. So I put to the council C, which is adopt the licence to occupy fees as consulted on in the draft user fees and charges. Ask all those in favour. Aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Aye.
Sorry. Yeah, so Councillor, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Crowther is against C. Now, yeah, the C.
Yeah, C's up there.
So that's, sorry, I'm confused.
So that's carried.
That's
Yep.
carried.
Yep.
So C remains.
It shouldn't have me.
No, that was part of the substantive. So it was agreed by Councillor Taylor and myself to take it into the substantive. So, but we just took that in parts. So C is carried. Now we'll take every other one except for C.
Can we just change E now?
No, 'cause
Leave
it's-
E, that's right. Leave E as it is.
It's in, yeah. So now I'll take the rest of it without C. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Crowther against. That is carried. All right, thank you very much. Right, that one took a little longer than expected.
While we're just
We flogged it to death, sorry.
while I'm sitting up in this room, just a bit of expectation management now. We've just spent an hour and 15 minutes on 4 cemeteries charges and 1 licence to occupy. So when the comprehensive review comes through with 68 pages of the current document and the things we don't charge for at the moment, just expect to see a lot of workshop time come through in your diaries because it's going to take a minute or two.
All right, so we're actually, we were going to get on to those new papers, but I think we're not going to now. We've got we've got a parking one as well to add to tomorrow, but we are going to do 11.10. This will be our last item for the day. So this is Rating Policy 25-26 Annual Plan, and I guess Jim is going to take us through this. Thank you, staff, for your time on that. Oh, sorry, 230 of the main agenda.
Kia ora koutou, me mahi and councillors. I will introduce this paper on rating by first reminding you that we didn't actually ask any specific rating questions in the annual plan consultation, but you did invite submissions on the decision to continue with the rating policy that was decided in the long-term plan by the last council. and you also looked at a minor change to the definition of the industrial rating category to move industrial rating units that were 250 square metres or under into the commercial rating category. Now, there was, as you might expect, submissions from industrial sector against the industrial rating category, as there was in the long-term plan, and there was also support from the residential sector asking that the industrial rating category remained. So there was nothing really new in the submissions that you would have not expected other than that. There was some additional submissions on the urban growth targeted rate in Papamoa. You had previously discussed that that would be an item that you would look at in the long-term plan, which may start from next year on. So I'll take the paper as read and answer any questions you've got on the paper or any of the submissions that you've heard during the hearings.
Yeah, so I guess some direction here. You know, we've discussed this heavily. You know, through you know, this is basically asking around the new definition of industrial category that 250 square metres or less is going to go into commercial. It's also those fixed proportions of where the rates were, and I know we have done that. You know, we have done a lot of that. Obviously, we are aware of a number of submissions, and I think the general consensus was the 250 metres square overall was supported by the majority. You know, there was obviously a couple of submissions against it. So, yeah, I would like to, unless there's any really burning questions around the submissions or any major comments, I think we can move through this one pretty quickly. Councillor Kurak.
Thank you, Jim. During the submissions, and I remember John Robson being at the Bay Oval, and I asked, in terms of addressing the affordability around the lower end, some work around the UAGC, but would that best be left for perhaps a later time, which might be more appropriate?
Through the chair, the Uniform Annual General Charge is a fundamental part of rates in the New Zealand Rating Act, and if you wanted to look at reducing the level of the uniform charge, it would be best done as part of a long-term plan model, and just also adding to that depending on the decision you make on the waters, the stormwater component of the general rate may move to a different charging mechanism, in which case you would also have to look at the level of uniform charge at that time. So rather than having to do it multiple times, you might want to look at doing that at the most appropriate time. The maximum that you can charge the fixed charges in New Zealand is 30%. Now, we were there in the early 2000s, and subsequent councils have reduced that 30%, and you remember this, Councillor Kurak, from 30 down to 10% at the moment. Other councils, Hamilton used to have no uniform annual general charge, but they moved towards the same methodology that we were using in Tauranga, which at that point was 30%. So they actually moved to 30% as we moved down the way to 10% to help affordability. So it is definitely a council decision, but probably best consulted through a long-term plan. Does that help?
So we're currently at 10% of our, yep.
10%.
Cool. So that's just literally like the, $370 million times 10% and then just split by the 61,000 rating units. Is that how it works?
It's 10% of the total rates, which includes water, can be charged as a fixed amount in total, and that's why if water moves off, you'll have quite a different fixed total rates. So the uniform charge, if left at, even if you leave it at 10%, will be quite a different number than it is at the moment. So there definitely will be a time that you will want to review that uniform annual general charge.
Cool. No, that's good for understanding. Thank you.
So we weren't involved in the process that started the variations between that and residential. Did you hear anything in the submissions that we've received, or seen anything in the submissions we've received that was different to what was presented during the long-term plan process?
Nothing significant. There was some commentary from the industrial representative groups, the master builders, property council, etc., around whether the change to the industrial category has resulted in some reduction in growth in the city as a result of introducing the industrial rating category. I'm not sure that that's actually the case, because a lot of the reduction in growth was around the revaluation process and the reduction in the amount of total rateable value, and also, as we discussed in previous meetings, about some of the central government sector properties that were applying for non-rateable status when they were leasing commercial buildings outside of hospitals, that type of thing. So I'm not sure that's entirely a true comment, but that was a feeling amongst some of the representative groups that the industrial rate may be a factor in reducing growth.
Councillor Crowther.
You raised an excellent point, Jim, about the the UAG. I guess I'm just want to understand something I didn't cover off in the waters discussion, so it might be for Paul to answer. Is if like the Western Bay context is very different. Like they have a big fixed water charge and we don't. So that has been discussed quite extensively in their council meetings, and it's been discussed around the country in council meetings around this issue of fixed versus, general rate versus, all that sort of stuff. Can we direct a Waters CCO, Paul, or whoever can answer it, to, or whatever the right word is, put it in our statement of expectations and not have them throw it back at us, to actually charge for stormwater based on the property value as you would for a general rate?
The legislation that's come through from central government prohibits the charging of stormwater. Draft legislation basically says that you can't use property values to collect your stormwater money. There are other proxies.
Because that would overwhelm the UAGC by a factor of like 2 or 3 for a typical ratepayer right now, from what I understand of the numbers. So we're talking about a massive shift of burden from people with low value properties having to pay more, and high value properties having to pay less proportionately than they are now.
Sorry, does that just to clarify that, how is stormwater rated at the moment?
Stormwater is part of the general rate, so it's based on capital value and the differential.
Okay.
Yep.
Just a follow-up question. Is there a reason that wasn't put out to the public in the public consultation? Because that does seem quite relevant to what members of the public would kind of, want to, like, was that not known at the time? Is that later legislation?
Yeah, I believe that the Waters paper addressed affordability. There will be different mechanisms they can use to look at the. Wasn't specific, so they would still have to look at an alternative to the existing charging methodologies.
Councillor Schooler.
Thank you. I just wonder why we need C on the recommendation. So it's just, we've already agreed that. But it just, if you end up agree with something, then all the reasons you agreed with it and the minutes of that meeting stay with that decision. If you then just have that, you never know that you've actually gone back to actually when we discussed it. So I'd be happy to move the motion for A and B.
Paul is
There is no requirement. That's consistent with the position that we've currently got.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So if we said confirms,
But we don't even need to say it because we had it was quite a big discussion. So if we go back to this in a year's time, I would prefer to go back to the meeting that we discussed it properly and voted on it, because that's where the report about that was included. And this doesn't really have much about that.
Perhaps Jeremy, could you?
It's already a fact.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's all factually true. I guess sometimes we put these sort of resolutions in there as a conscious decision after the consultation process. People brought it up and council has talked about it and we're still where we were before. So a no decision is similar. A confirmed decision just makes it more explicit. You end up in the same place.
You're just repeating stuff that's already been agreed. It's not as efficient.
yeah.
Do it once.
Yeah, I agree, but I think this is, from a transparency perspective, we're saying we've listened to the submissions and we confirm our position that you know, despite the, I think that is.
Transparency.
It's digital, there's no options on the Bible, isn't it?
And I think we could just change it to maybe, continues, that's fine.
You're right with it? I'll wait a second if you...
Okay, councillor Schooler.
As I've got my way before, I'll
Councillor Taylor.
compromise.
Any further discussion on this? Yes, councillor Roseboom.
This is more reference to B, Councillor Taylor and I, after much discussion, we got to this point of
Your mic, sorry.
Right, yeah. So this is in relation to B. After a lot of toing and froing earlier in the year, we got to 250 metre moving out of industrial into the commercial. From talking to a lot of commercial and industrial users, they're generally happy. Obviously, most of my angst and feedback from a fairly hostile nature come from those buildings between 250 and 400. They were quite miffed that they missed out. It generally sparked a broader discussion around why do we have two, and then when I got into discussion of the transport component, most of the commercial guys were happy not to be in that discussion. So they're happy. The industrial guys, most of them understand, except some of them now having issues, the building owners having issues around leasing buildings, and they are primarily using our rates argument as why they're struggling to lease. They're not using the current financial conditions, and some businesses are struggling regardless because of changes of movements, and there's been a lot of new buildings built and they're just adapting to the new business estate at Tauranga. But this year around how we manage this, I've got some concerns around our differential, whether it be a ratio or a percentage, and how we control that. The industrial guys, because their rates are slightly higher on a percentage basis, any small change at the bottom has a big effect on them at the top. It's quite a big swing, and they would prefer, if we were going to make a change, it be gradual, so not quite so shifty in 1 year. So we need to be thinking very careful when our next valuation period comes around and what year we do that valuation, that we don't do what the previous council did and pick the peak of the real estate curve to do a valuation. That's where most of the angst has come from. So we need to be very conscious about the impacts of when we make these decisions and the impact they have on our people, because a lot of these guys are also residential rate payers as well, so they're getting hit twice. But generally speaking, the 250 was well received, and they would quite happy to work with us again to make other little tweaks.
Thank you. All right. If there's no more discussion, Councillor Schooler, you happy? Cool. Then I'll put the motion to the council and ask all those in favour. Those against? That is carried. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for your time again today. We have some tidying up to do. We've got a whiteboard over there. We've got a couple of other reports to consider tomorrow. Obviously, the one we got last night, as well as a new one today, just to reiterate the parking charges that we can look at tomorrow, and we'll tidy up those ones that we've also deferred, and any new ones that come onto that list. So hopefully we can move through that pretty quickly tomorrow, and finish it up, and not be here for another day. Just like to hand back to Councillor Rolleston, if he could just give us a closing karakia. Thank you.
Kia ora. Kino tātou. Kia tau, katoa te atawhai o te tātou ariki o i kraiti, me te arawa, te atua, me te whiwhi tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, hake ake, āmene.
Thank you. We'll see you 9 a.m. tomorrow, same place.